Hello, I am JG. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Mostly on here, I do reactions to TV shows, talk about movies, nerd culture, that type of stuff. But I wanted to do a different video as I get back into making YouTube videos again, and I really don't have anywhere else to put this video. It doesn't quite fit what I normally do on here, but I figured that this would be the place to do. And this should be going up around June 1st, if not on June 1st, for Pride Month, because it is that time. It is June, and that is when a lot of the festivities and a lot of the events are happening. And I have wanted to share my story about coming out and coming out as a Christian and being a Christian and being queer. And I've talked to people, specifically friends, a few people who don't know me super well, but because I always want to make sure that I'm available to people, because I think that's one of the things that can really happen very easily is the feeling of isolation. And that's the whole point of making this video for myself, is that this is for others. There have been many a times, younger, now, whenever, that I've looked on YouTube and have tried to find videos of Christians coming out or Christians talking about their queer experience, and you don't really see a lot of it because it's something that really isn't talked about a lot. It obviously is getting better, and obviously there are more people that are talking about it, but we still are in a place where there can be a lot of growth. But let's rewind. Let's go way back to when I was a kid, and let me just walk you through this journey to where I was essentially in self-denial, and basically where I am today, where I know who I am, I know my feelings, and all that. So, growing up, grew up in a pretty much a Christian household, and Christianity was important. Going to church, um, living it out as much as you can in a daily basis. I went to a private Christian school. It was very, blessed in that way, very fortunate. And with that, though, it came the very heteronormative worldview that, I was not exposed to like queer culture until maybe at my earliest, maybe like like 7th grade, maybe even high school, really. Like, it was not talked about. It was not really even like a thing. And I know that now looking back, I've had feelings for guy friends, at a very young age, and obviously, we don't have those thought processes, and like at that point, you're not thinking about it. But I can look back now and be like, okay, yeah, there were guys growing up that I had attraction to, that I can look back and be like, okay, yeah. And there are many other things too that I could look at that kind of that I can look back at and be like, okay, yeah, there were the signs, there were the clues. And I think that also like led to why, growing up in, elementary, middle school, that like I was kind of ostracized a little bit by my classmates, and that I was different. I liked to prefer to hang out with the girls. At that point, football was not really my thing, and the guys did not want to hang out with me. The guys didn't really want anything to do with me, and it was the girls that were my friends growing up and that I had friendships with and whatnot. And so that was that. And we would have Bible classes and whatnot. And it was always from the perspective that marriage is between a man and a woman, period. There was no other conversations. I really did not, I was very shielded at a young age. Really was not really exposed to even like the possibility and potential until like middle school, like 7th, 8th grade. Like, what? Like, seriously, like discovering that like health classes and whatnot, and even like what do they call it? They were like kind of like abstinence conferences. Like, they were all from the perspective of male and female relationships. And maybe that's why, like, in some capacity, like, it did not register because I was not thinking about relationships with uh women at that point, you know? Like, there was obviously, like, I had, like, the crushes and I kind of went along with it. And I had, I would say, like, emotional feelings for some girls growing up and such, but I never had, like, that physical attraction. And so, obviously, as I'm growing up and getting older, I'm realizing more that I'm attracted to men and that it was my preference and whatnot. And it was really challenging because I was becoming more aware of this and becoming more aware that there were others like me who also had these feelings and attraction, but it was still never brought up in school. It was never brought up in church. It was never brought up at like youth group. It was never brought up at any conferences. It was just, it was almost like it was treated that it just never existed, which is so silly. Like, now looking back, I'm like, why? Like, why? Like, there's a reason why like suicide is so high in this community, let alone people who are also coming from religious backgrounds, not just Christianity, but all religious backgrounds. So at that point, it was really hard because I very much in high school and even a little bit afterwards, very much felt like that I could never come out because I would either A, disappoint my parents so much or disappoint my family so much, or B, I would even potentially get kicked out. I had heard, horror, I had started to hear horror stories about what happened to Christian teenagers who came out. And my father is one of the most respectable men that I know. He is such a hard worker. He is such a provider. He is such a carer. But he has that, older generational mindset of the way that things were. And I will preface this now. This was then. I will say that now he's very much, I've seen change in him, and I've seen more open-mindedness and more willing to discuss and not be so angry. But growing up, there was that fear of, how would he react? How would my family react? And that was so scary. I was very close to my family, am very close to my family. And the thought of that coming out and losing that was very hard, and played a big part in me trying to hold it in because, if it was not talked about, then it was not talked about for a reason. So should I ever even bring it up? Why should I do this? And so, I go away for like a gap year program, and I actually come out to some guys, and we do the Christian thing, and like, we try to do the things that would like try to help that, I guess, however way you can help that. And I always remember, especially that year, just trying to so hard pray the gay away. You probably heard that statement before, and maybe it can happen, but spoiler, has not happened for me. It is not. So it was very demoralizing and frustrating, and then things happened that caused me to have to move back home. And that was a result of that, like, that internship shutting down. Again, I'm having feelings for guys still, and I'm becoming more cognizant that, like, oh yeah, there is a queer community. There are other gay people out there, and also not only that, but there are also Christians too. I think that's the big thing too. And there's such an idea in Christian culture that, like, some people, they'll say that, like, all sins are equal or whatnot, but then the way that they treat people in the LGBTQI plus community will treat them very differently. So very different persona there. And so as I am like going through the motions of coming back from this and getting some just side jobs, because I knew that college was not for me, was not going to do that for many reasons. But really working through and starting to like discover that like I had feelings for guys and not girls. And like I had told everyone that I was straight, I was straight, I was straight. And probably to some people it was very clearly obvious that I was not. And not only that, but I also had this idea that I had to put on this persona, that I had to be this super masculine, tough man, that I had to love sports, I had to be dirty, I had to be outdoorsy, I had to not have feelings, and the list goes on. You get what I'm saying. And I started to have to peel away those layers and realize that I can act the way that I act and I can be who I am. Like, that is fine. That's what's beautiful about humanity. So, moving forward, I eventually actually end up going to ministry school to get credentials. Again, still struggling with the fact that I like guys, but I have had such a embedded root of Christianity in my life that, it was something that made sense for me and in that moment in time and such. And I still do feel in some way, but, things that definitely had come out of that made me really feel isolated and alone, that because I was queer, that at any moment I could be outed, at any moment I could, lose my credentials as a result, at any moment I could go through these things and have it all taken away. And it was a big wake up call and whatnot. And then I was in that place where I was moving out on my own finally for my first time. And in that time of that season of being on my own and really working through my sexuality and not only that, but my faith as well. And always believing that I had to pick one or the other. That I either had to be a Christian or I had to be gay. And that was so hard because I had felt like I was living two lives. I felt like I had a group of friends who knew me as this super on fiery pastor to be, you know, going on the mission trips to Africa and India and so forth. And then other people knew me as this super lovable, queer, nerdy, silly guy, affectionate. But it always felt like that I had to rip myself in half and that I had to put on a facade for both groups and that um I could never truly feel whole. That I could never give myself completely as a person to any of my friends. And that sucked. And even now that like just makes me emotional thinking about that time and that season. And I did hit one of my lowest lows that I ever had. I've had thoughts of, you know, darker thoughts of isolation and harm. I've never done it, mostly out of fear, but there were some low points in that season. Um, as I explain to people, or when I tell people, um, the quiet was extra quiet and the nights were extra dark. So that was a really hard point. And I had a really good friend though in that season who challenged my beliefs, who really helped me peel away the layers to discover that I did not have to rip myself in half, that I could be just JG. I could be, you know, a queer Christian. Like, It's not much more complicated than that. First was realizing that like sexuality is not binary and that it's not as simple as like, oh, just liking girls and liking guys. There is a spectrum. Beautiful. And then realizing that it also does not mean that I'm not a Christian either. If I believe that, or whatever religion or whatever you don't believe in, whatever that might be or is, that they do not have to seclude each other. And that was always a thing, was that you always had to go one way or the other. And discovering that, I can enjoy the things that I enjoy, that I don't have to make my voice deeper. I don't have to walk a certain way. I don't have to fill in the blank, For a very simple, just to really simplify it, I don't have to act straight, essentially. Shocker. But this was such a huge revelation for me. And we are just talking, like, this is all happening around 2018. So, about 6 years ago. And this was a moment for me. And I finally was starting to tell a few close people. And it was really hard. And obviously a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, we do. And I was like, okay, yeah. But it felt so good. It felt so relieving. And then 2019 happens. And I meet the guy for the first time that I really wanted to pursue. And long story short, it did not work out very well. For many reasons. It just did not work out. So, but in that process though, it was the time that I was able to realize that I could be loved, because I had not really had felt that before. I had felt a lot of isolation because of my sexuality, because of my religious beliefs. And going into that, I discovered that I could be loved, I didn't talk about it much, but my birth mom left when I was 10, so there was a bit of abandonment issues that came into play, and, it did not work out with this guy, but that came from it, and he was the one that inspired me, and he didn't, I won't even say encouraged, but he inspired me to come out, and when I came out in October of 2019, that was the scariest day of one of the scariest days of my life. I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what was happening. And all the messages I was getting. Fortunately, most of those messages were very positive. There were many that were not. And many that were not were from Christians. And it hurt a lot in that moment. I have since have healed and come from that moment. And I definitely think things could have worked out a little bit better in some ways. I can't control other people's actions who might have commented on things and whatnot. But that was a roller coaster of a day. Yeah, I look back at that and just wanting to be free from it all. And I did feel free. I did feel finally that this burden could come off my chest. And it was such a relief that day. And there were several messages that I received from people that I did not expect to receive that were very encouraging and very positive. So that was insane. Insane. I had a little bit of, I think, a rift from my parents at that point, where eventually it just kind of led and has led to we just don't talk about it. And so I respect that, However, I have always have told my family, I have always told my friends, I have told anyone and everyone, even y'all who are watching this video, talk to me. Let me tell my story. Let me tell you what I'm feeling. Let me answer what I can. I'm not Google. I don't have all the answers. I don't also expect to, change your beliefs or your views, but maybe we can challenge each other and talk about what we believe and what we don't believe and have some healthy conversations here. I think that's really important. And so, I've really been in this place since then of discovering my faith, discovering my queerness, I guess, that, in some ways I still do call myself a Christian. I do still have those beliefs. I think there's nothing that could take that away from the experiences that I've had. But it is very different now because of everything that has happened, because of how Christians in general present themselves nowadays. It's very different. Or maybe I was naive when I was younger, but there was such a different, it feels so different now. And it blows me away what happens, in Christian circles against the LGBTQI community. Like, that's not what this video is about, but it does break my heart and it hurts. And if I could just be one person that can maybe bridge this gap here and really help Christians love the queer community and help the queer community realize that there are some Christians who want to help, who want to be there, who want to be a shoulder to cry on. There are those people out there. I know sometimes the very loud minority can be very loud and very hateful and very spiteful. It just hurts and it breaks my heart. And I just hope that by sharing this journey experience will help one person, then it's worth it. You're not alone. If you are a Christian and you are wrestling with your sexuality and whether you're queer or somewhere in that, like, you're loved. You are so loved by people who you don't even know, probably in some capacity people you do know, and if you are religious and in that capacity as well. Just know that when the nights are extra dark and when the quiet is extra quiet, that there is hope, that there is a purpose for you, and that there is a reason, because maybe you're going to have a story one day that you're going to have to tell someone, that you're going to share, that's going to help them, and it will ripple effect. And there are just so many people who are hurting. There are so many people who are thinking that there are no other options, that it's not true. And so I just want to challenge those who aren't queer, an ally. If you don't understand, that's okay. You don't have to. You don't have to understand to just be a shoulder for someone to cry on. You don't have to know anything to give someone a hug. You don't have to do anything to listen. That is the biggest thing, is just listen. Especially in this month when people are probably more people will probably come out. Just listen. ask respectful questions, have conversations. Because when we have these conversations, that's how we as humans can grow and learn and just bathe in the beauty and the vibrance of all the cultures that we have on this planet. Life would be so stale and boring if we were all the same. And the beauty is, we aren't. So, that is essentially my story. I really do hope that it reaches someone. You know, I'm queer. I like guys. And yeah, I still go to church on Sundays. So that summarizes everything, y'all. It's that simple. And guess what? It's different for everyone. Don't assume that it has to be the same for every single person, because it shouldn't and it doesn't have to be. So thank you so much for listening to this video. I know it was all over the place. I did not want to script this. I just wanted to talk, have a conversation. Me, you. As always, please, comments are going to be open. Be respectful. If you want to message me directly, probably the easiest will be on Twitter. jg_carse should be linked down below. Shoot me a message on Twitter, and we can talk. And I will also throw some resources in the comments, or in the description as well. Again, thank you guys so much for listening, and have a great day, y'all.